So in this video we're going to show you how to replace the motor brushes in the Corgi ElectroRockets Phase 1 motor. The Phase 1, as we looked at in our other videos, is the more common one with the smaller motor, not the Sizzler's motor. And these motors don't appear to be available anymore, like the Sizzler ones still are. So the only option for us here is to replace motor brushes, as the brushes are the part of the motor that seems to be the part that's most affected by the corrosion. You'll find either broken or completely dissolved. The brushes being these sort of, let's see this winding here. There's one on the top and one on the bottom. Usually the motor inside, the actual spindle itself, is fine, as we looked at on the other video I did. But it's the brushes that are the issue, and I've tried several different sort of brush wires on these motors with very limited success. I tried transplanting some brushes from a scale-electric motor, but they didn't really work. I think the scale-electric motor is designed for working on 12 volts. Of course, these are only designed for 2.5 volts, so the motor didn't really work very well, and it actually overheated. I actually tried some wire, I think it was called hard-drawn nickel wire. You see this is more of a flat wire, but I tried a 0.25mm diameter sort of round hard-drawn nickel wire, and they did actually make the motor work better than the scale-electric ones. But I did find that the motors were a little bit slower than the standard motors, plus I had one that broke, and when I opened it up, the hard drawn nickel wire was quite harsh on the commutator, causing a lot of wear on it. So I decided that was probably not worth pursuing anymore. And what I had been trying to find is some copper ribbon wire that's 0.6mm wide by 0.1mm thick, which I just haven't been able to find at all anywhere. I think I could probably get some fabricated, but what with the minimum fabrication amount that some companies would insist upon, it just wasn't worthwhile. So I decided to take a sort of arts and crafts approach and actually try and fabricate some myself using 0.1mm copper, cutting from a, say, 0.1mm copper strip off some copper sheet. And I managed to locate some of this, it's actually aviation 99.8% quality aviation grade copper sheet. There's a whole load of it here. I only need a very small amount. And the idea is to cut strips 0.6mm wide using some metal shears that I've got here, which takes a little bit of practice. But as you can see on this one, I've got a couple running around on the tracks now that are using these home fabricated brushes, and they work absolutely brilliantly. So I thought it might be worth my while just showing you how to do this. So we will begin. First of all, we'll have to take this motor apart, and if you need to look at that, I think instead of me doing it all over again, if you watch my video on the Corgi ElectroRockets repair and cleaning guide, I explain how to actually dismantle these motors so that we can get it down to this sort of state where we've just got the end plate and the casing has been detached. This particular example, I did actually wind this with some, you can see inside here, there's two little brushes in there. This is when I tried out using a I think it was 0.6mm wide nickel chrome ribbon wire, but this didn't work at all. So that's why this has been sort of kicking around, but I'll use this as a for the purpose of this video to demonstrate how to do this. So when we open up the motor for the first time, you will probably find that these two brushes that, let me just my pointy stick thing here. You'll find that there's the two brushes you can see inside here, top and bottom, probably won't be present, or they're actually broken. So we've got to get out what remains of the brushes, and if there is nothing there, this next procedure is actually quite useful for getting in the new brushes into the end cap. I found by a complete accident that there's some plastic pins here that hold the brushes in, and I'll pull them out. And as you can see, it's like a little plastic peg. And once I sort of found these pegs, so I found them, they came out completely by accident, made the whole process a lot easier. There we are. So we've got the two plastic pegs there. Now these brushes that I fabricated that didn't work, I'm just going to pull these out, and they're sort of round and round, and they're sort of pinched in this corner here by this contact on the back that sticks through inside. So it's just if they're not here, you won't have to do this procedure, but they're just a matter of pushing these out. And I'll do this one as well. So basically these are the brushes. So I fabricated these out of nickel chrome, which these ones don't actually work. But if you find that you've got some remnants of the brushes still in there, it's useful getting them out and using them as a guide, as a pattern, as to what we have to fabricate. Now, in order to wind the brushes, I've been using this wooden stick that I've sanded down to match the diameter of the carriers, the plastic carriers that are on the ends here. And the idea is to wind them around this piece of. You see how fiddly everything is. Is to wind them around this piece of stick. I'll get one on. That's better. I'm trying to look at the camera, through the camera, and look at it at the same time. Is to wind them around this piece of stick, so we get that kind of profile for the brushes. And once you've actually wound them, it's quite say easy, but it's a relatively straightforward to put them back in. So I'm going to show you how I cut this this copper sheet. I've cut a piece off here. So it does take a bit of practice, but what you will find is that when you start cutting strips of this, that the actual strip you're cutting curls up. So basically that's what you get, and it's just a matter of straightening it out. And then you've got to make the windings. Now you've got about, let's have a look. You've got to wind so you get the same amount of windings. So there's actually four windings. So we go around. So that's basically what we're trying to achieve. So I haven't done this for a few weeks now, so I'll probably be able to practice that. But that is basically the principle of how we wind these brushes. And when you've had a bit of practice, you will get them so they look a bit more like this. And then all that just means is a little bit more fiddling around to push these brushes onto these retainers here, which I'm having struggle with. Well, you can see it is a very fiddly job, but it can be done. I mean, I spent probably about half an hour or so on the ones that I did before, and I was probably, with the winding of the copper, it took me 2 or 3 goes sometimes to get them correct. But I've got, say, 2 cars running around when I've used this method, and it does actually work, but you just need a bit of patience. So once you've got the brush back into the carrier, you just need to push these little things back in just to hold them back in again. But if you can find any 0.1mm thick by 6mm wide ribbon wire, copper ribbon wire, okay, this is 99.8% copper, that's going to make the whole task a lot more partly easier. You're not going to have to try and cut these slivers of copper from the copper sheet. Well, hopefully this video just gives you a sort of an idea of how we can actually get these motors repaired. As I say, it's the brushes that are the main issue with them, and if you can practice doing this method to fabricate the brushes, you're going to have a car that's going to be running really well. So the 2 I've got with the refabricated brushes are going absolutely brilliantly.